Study with me left me a comment asking how would you memorize this information. So I thought I would go through and explain how I would memorize this. So the first thing I noticed was there's a lot of numbers here. Now, I recommend having a two-digit number system. If you have a single-digit number system like the number rhyme system, you're going to have so many repeating images. And look, everything has numbers to it. So you want to have a more complex number system. Ideally, probably a PAO, but if not that, at least a two-digit number system. So that's the first thing I noticed. And then the other thing is, you have all of these different places or oceans or whatever they may be, some geographical location. Now, this isn't really that hard because all you're doing is just memorizing random words at that point, right? But one thing you do want to keep in mind is that, hey, if you already create an image for a word, use the same image the next time you see it pop up. So for ocean, whatever image you're using for ocean, use it all the time, okay, the same image. So you don't have like 5 different images representing ocean because you might get confused with, wait, is this image for ocean or is it for something else? If everything or all the oceans are represented by one image, then you can't have that problem, right? So that's really useful. Now, besides that, for me, the best way to memorize this would be with a memory palace. You could use a story method here, but the issue is that you have so much information that you want to review this whenever you can, right? Because you got to make sure all the numbers are correct that you're saying. So when it comes to the story method, what happens is that you can't review the information unless you're given one of the parts, right? So the greatest steps. So either you're given, even if you're given a number, you don't know what number is supposed to belong to, right? And so if you have a question like, how deep is the Mariana Trench? Then you're able to see your images and then get the number part, right? The 35,827 feet. But if it's the other way around, you need to know already that this is the Mariana Trench depth. So with the story method, you need a trigger of some sort. A memory palace, you're able to review all that information in your head because it's in a palace. So all you have to do is just walk through it. That's why I would use a memory palace here, because everything would be easier to review when you're washing dishes, vacuuming, walking around in the store, whatever it may be. So I think it's more beneficial to use a memory palace. Now, as you could tell, you kind of have these main categories and then kind of these subcategories, right? And so one thing you could do is create a memory palace for every single category. So for major islands, for major seas, for deepest oceans and seas. So everything could have its own memory palace. Now the problem with that is that you have so many palaces you're going to be creating. And so now the issue that happens is, how do you remember all the palaces without forgetting one, right? So of course you could practice, I have 30 palaces, so I'm just going to go there and keep reviewing all the main palaces, whatever name you give your palaces. Or at least that's how I review my palaces. So say if I created a palace for every single piece of information here, I don't know, maybe it looks like maybe 30 or 50, there's a lot. I would give each palace a name, and then I wouldn't actually go through and review every single palace. I would go through and review the palace and what it has associated with it. So my house might have the major deserts. So I would picture my house, see the first location or kind of a sub-location. And so I would see it, and then I would picture a whole bunch of desserts. Desserts, the only thing that makes a difference is the S. So a whole bunch of desserts, on my house or something like that. So I'm like, oh yeah, my house is the major desert. Boom, got it. So that's how I would connect it. And as you could tell, you have so many, so you have to do that for every single palace. The other thing I would do instead of that is to have a memory palace that has similar information together. So right here, you have overview of the Earth. This will be its own palace because it's just dealing with Earth itself, right? But right here, the oceans, and then the major bodies of water. So stuff like this, I would have one memory palace, but I would have a marker, kind of like a tab or sticky note you put in a book to keep your page. And so right here, we have 4 greatest depths that this gives you. So in 4 locations, I would have this information. And then in the 5th location, I would have the deepest oceans and seas. But here, I would create a image for deepest oceans and seas. So let's say the last location is my bathroom, and that's the ocean's greatest depths, okay? So the fifth location, maybe that is like the laundry room. It's right next to it. And so, okay, deepest oceans and seas. So I would put in the fifth location the next information, which is the Pacific Ocean. But in the fifth location as well, I would put my marker for deepest oceans and seas. So oceans and seas, maybe I see a seesaw, ocean, I think of lotion. So maybe I see in the washer and dryer, there's these two lotions going back and forth on this seesaw. And so in addition with that imagery in the fifth location, I put the Pacific Ocean. So when I'm going through the palace and I come across the laundry room, I'm like, oh wait, I see a seesaw and I see two lotions playing on it. Oh yeah, so this marker means I'm starting the deepest oceans and seas. So of course in that same location I have the Pacific Ocean. And so that's how I know when I'm changing information. So if you're using the same palace to have multiple categories or topics in there, you want to have a marker in order to let you know, hey, you're changing the different topic now. Because if you don't have that, you might just keep running through it and forget, oh crap, where did I start? Or if you want to jump to it right away, you don't know where to jump to unless you really know your locations. All you have to do is look for the marker, and then you're able to jump instantly to that specific information topic. So hopefully that makes sense. So that's what I would probably do for all this information. But like I said, I would group things together in order to make things a lot easier. So all the deserts would be together. Continents would probably be its own palace. Countries, oh man. So yeah, so even though you want to keep everything together, you might just have multiple palaces because of how much information is there. As you can tell, this country's one has a lot of information, so you might need two palaces. But it's up to you to keep the order of all your palaces and keep the right information in them. Because if you have three palaces just for this country once, or just for this country's information, you have to know which palaces they are. So you gotta make sure you're creating whatever marker you're making for countries and tagging them for each palace. And then beyond that, all it really comes down to is just changing your images, or changing the numbers into your images and then the words into images. That's pretty much it. So the hardest part behind all of this would probably be creating all your palaces that you need. If you go that route. If you don't go that route and you want to use the story method, then essentially everything becomes like a question, right? And so how big is Russia? And then this is the answer to it, right? So if you're doing it that way, like I said before, the only problem is you need to actually see something to quiz yourself. Because if you don't have that, then you really can't review. And so this is something you need to break down, because try and do this try and do all of this in one single day, that's crazy. Okay, that's a lot of information. So you might even break it up into the different categories. If you're feeling good, so maybe you do the Earth first. You feel good about that, you might go for another section. If not, the next day, go do a new section of information, but then review the last one, because you want to make sure all your images are there, right? Because hopefully you want this for long term. So you got to start staggering how you're memorizing, then review the previous one. Then you memorize new information, memorize the previous one. And then you got to make sure that you do review the information way in the beginning, because if you go too long, your images are going to start to fade. But pretty much that is how I would memorize something like this. I might actually try to memorize all this information, because, it's always good to kind of keep yourself on your toes. And this is kind of useful information in the sense that you can just talk about different countries or different places, right? Because we all live in the world, so it's great to know information about the world. So hopefully study with me. This kind of answers your question. I didn't do any specific examples because, it's pretty simple, in my house, Greenland. Green is a place in Kirby's world. Kirby is a Nintendo character. And so at my desk, I see Kirby. That represents Greenland. And then I'm going to change all this into my images from a number of systems, right? I have Hitler, Stalin, and Gong. So I see Hitler, Stalin, and Gong, and maybe Kirby sucks him up, because that's what Kirby does. He sucks people up and gets their powers. So I see that happening here. So we've got square Miles. I see my aunt's dog, Miles, square. He's wearing a square, okay? And so he's coming in and just barking at everyone. So for me, in order to recall, hey, Greenland, what's the size of it? I'm like, okay, Greenland at my desk. Oh yeah, I saw Kirby. Okay, that's gonna be Greenland. and then I saw Hitler stealing a gong, 83, 63, 30, and square miles, because I see miles in a square suit or a square costume, and boom, that's it. So there's a quick example, but besides that, doing all these examples, it's pretty much the exact same thing. It just repeats itself. You just might get stuck on creating images for these different words that you're seeing, because that, man, I don't even know how to pronounce that. So when it comes to this, I would probably base my images off association or spelling base, because a lot of these words I won't know how to pronounce correctly. So that's what I would do. But if you know how to pronounce it, of course, it's always better to be able to pronounce something correctly, just in case you need to talk about it, right? But there you go. I know this video is pretty long, but I just wanted to give you all of the insights to what I would do to learn all this information. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.